What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about two metaverse tokens in this video. We're going to talk about Mana and Sandbox, the two biggest metaverse tokens in crypto at the moment. This video is coming to us at the request of Mohammed El-Mensi. We're going to compare Mana and Sand. It's going to be a little Mana versus Sand video here. We'll talk about both of them individually, and then we'll combine the charts and just kind of try and figure out which one of these two titans of metaverse crypto are more likely to be the ones that, which one's more likely to see higher gains from this point forward through the rest of the market. We're going to try to figure that out. So if that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'm going to try to not get stuck on my words so much, and let's go forward here. So looking at Mana, looking at it right now, we're at about 61.6 cents, right? Sandbox itself, if we type in sand here, shout out to Bitcoin at 104K, hitting new all-time highs today, beautiful. Sandbox at 73 cents. You know, it's wild, you guys, because these things were worth like the same price before this recent move up. They were, I think, actually even before this move up, like down here, they were worth the same price. But anyway, 73 cents, Mana at 61.5 cents. That's not too far away in price at all. We're going to do Mana first, and then we'll do Sandbox, okay? Overall, Mana is in this large kind of consolidation phase, right? We're at the top of that consolidation phase now. The first time that we were up here, we rejected immediately. The second time we were up here, we rejected immediately. The third time, however, we've been up here now for our 5th week. This is our 5th week up here. So I would assume that different behavior begets different results. I would assume that being that this is our 3rd attempt at this area of resistance, that we will break through it. And that attempt breaking through, I think, would result in a move overall that would take us at least to $1.67, if not potentially as high as $4.05. It's worth 61.5 cents now. A whole dollar higher is the minimum target, and these targets, by the way, are what I'm giving for the end of January. Okay, let's go forward and talk about Sandbox now, right? Weekly RSI looks great for Mana. Daily RSI looks great for Mana. The 4 hours even actually starting to shear up a little bit, but it doesn't look the best. I think it'll look nicer once we start seeing readings above the 60. That's my thoughts, and I think we might get those this week. I actually very much do believe we'll see them this week. But anyway, Sandbox. Looking at this thing on a weekly perspective, nice weekly RSI, very strong readings, right? Strongest readings you've seen since you've been in this zone down here. You kind of have a box of your own, don't you? Consolidation phase. The first time you're up here, you were hanging out for like 4 or 5 weeks, and then you moved down. Here you sold off immediately. Here you've been hanging out for 4 weeks, so it's similar to this to some degree. Much stronger readings, right? Much stronger readings. Here, this is just a high from a bounce, a lower low bounce. Here, this is a higher high, the 3rd attempt at the top of this range, and you came from the lowest lows of this overall range. So it's a lot stronger of a move, and you're above your 123 moving average. I think you're going higher. Hold on. From a high to a low, I would expect you're at 73.5 cents now. I would expect that your next target would be at least $2.06. You're at 73.5 cents. Your minimum target would be $2.06. Potentially as high as $5.57, though I would assume that you probably stop more so between about $2.07 and $3.84. That's my personal target, and these are by the end of January. But with the exception that 557 might be a target by the end of January. I think that'll be in a later date, but I definitely do think you're going higher. So those are nice targets, right? Overall comparison-wise, I think Sandbox does look like it has more gains to go, probably, right? Like if this is my realistic maximum expectation, I think this is a little bit more unrealistic by the end of January, but who knows? It could happen. That's about a 5.3x from there. Mana, from its current price, you know, that would give it, at the same 786, that would give it about a 4.6x. So 5.3x, 4.6x, you know, it's a little bit different there. But Mana, I would say, has a stronger chance of seeing its 886 being hit, which gives it a stronger chance of seeing overall growth, more growth overall. But I don't know if it does. I would think if Sandbox stops at its 786, Mana might do the same, right? Because they're very much compatible. You look at the weekly time frame here, they're very compatible with their fibs, right? From a high to a low, you're finding your 3rd peak here at your 382, lower lows each time, right? Sandbox here, finding your third peak here at the 382, lower lows each time. It would make sense. They've been so equivalent on the fib structure. I would think that they have the same thing going forward. So now that we've gotten both these charts out of the way, it does seem like Sandbox has the more potential in growth already. But let's compare the two now, Mana versus Sand, and just see, maybe this is it has more potential to grow on this move, but does it have more potential to grow overall by the end of the cycle, right? How much higher is it going to go? Where is it going to top off by the end of the cycle? And I do want to give end of cycle predictions by the end of this video, but I want to go on to this chart now. Okay, so this is Mana versus Sandbox. Did Sandbox, how long has it been around for? Okay. We've got to have more data than this. Oh, it's because it's Mana on Coinbase. We don't want that. We want Mana on crypto. There we go. There we go. It's a little bit more hectic there. That's okay though. Whatever. Looking at this chart here, so this is Mana versus Sandbox, right? Whenever this is going up, it's gaining value versus Sandbox. Whenever it's going down, it's losing value versus Sandbox. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. So important to note there, Mana has lost some value versus Sandbox recently, and that's fair because Mana itself, on this very nice move up that it's had since November 4th, has grown an overall 231%, while Sandbox in that same amount of time has grown 377 versus 231. Obviously this chart is going to tank a little bit. Okay, so we're looking at the weekly RSI. I would say, if you notice that this low here, right? This low here, all these higher lows coming up here. This low here was pretty close to the oversold zone, right? This low here was at the oversold zone as well, right? And then this low here, you're in the oversold zone as well. It's a bit of a different move, but higher lows kind of overall. I guess it's a lower low than this one, to be completely fair. Who's to say if you continue to go lower or not? It's very possible. Let's kind of do some deeper analysis here. Looking at this weekly RSI, I would say, to me it seems as though you had a move down, you had a very long phase of sideways upward consolidation, and now you're starting your next move down, is what it seems like to me. Low to high, I would think based off of this, Sandbox would at least go, or Mana, sorry, would go to at least 0.75 of Sandbox to 0.71, somewhere in that area. Maybe you find support down there. You kind of found support in this area before. Maybe go a little bit lower and find support down here. But it does look like it wants to continue to lose value versus Sandbox, at least in the short term, which makes sense, right? Because I think we have higher targets overall for Sandbox than Mana, at least expectations. However, if we look at this, we do have some bullish divergence on the daily time frame. Do we have it on the weekly? No, we don't. Daily time frame. What about, I also want to just see real quick on the weekly. That's the weakest, those are the weakest readings you've ever seen, right? Let's go to the strongest readings you've ever seen, okay, which were right here. What happened when you got the strongest readings you've ever seen? Well, you tanked. I wonder if you see the weakest readings, would that mean you pump, maybe? It's not normally how it works, but sometimes it is, maybe. That would be interesting. It's an interesting thought. It can definitely go lower. Just because it's the weakest it's ever seen doesn't mean that it can't go lower from here. It can go lower. But looking at the daily time frame, higher lows and lower lows, that is bullish divergence. That would at least be good for a move here, which doesn't necessarily make sense because that would imply then that on this move up, maybe what happens, okay, maybe we can make sense of this. Maybe Mana moves first and then Sandbox moves after and it catches up. Maybe that's what we see. Maybe we see an overall, like a recovery here. You're moving down, you see a little bounce, but then overall you continue your move down. Because I would think Sandbox does grow more overall. But time will tell. We'll see how it goes. I don't really know if this is conclusive. I would say, looking at the daily time frame on Mana versus Sandbox, it does appear that over the coming days, probably over the coming week or weeks even, we will see Mana gain some value versus Sandbox. We'll probably see this separation in price, 61 cents, 73 cents. We'll probably see it come together instead of being, diverged. But then once Mana catches up to Sandbox, we'll probably see Sandbox start getting away from Mana again, right? Once Mana catches up, Sandbox will probably get away from it again, is my expectation at the moment. and maybe I shouldn't even say, yeah, probably catches up. It probably doesn't get to the exact same price as Sandbox, but just below it. Anyways, guys, I got nothing else I want to say. The daily RSI is in a bullish position right now, but overall it is bearish. The weekly RSI is the most bearish we've ever seen it technically, right? And the 4-hour looks like it wants to go up. So the short-term stuff would mean Mana is going to gain value. The longer-term stuff would suggest that Mana is going to lose value versus Sandbox. And as far as the overall cycle goes, I don't know if we have conclusive evidence of which one's going to be the winner. I mean, if Sandbox were to drop all the way down here and find some kind of double bottom, or Mana versus Sandbox, were to find some double bottom in early 2025, it could spend the rest of the cycle trying to gain value versus Sandbox. And so maybe over the coming months, maybe over like the next 3 months or 6 months, Sandbox is the better buy, but then after that, Mana would be the better buy. Maybe it's found its low already and it's ready to go up, or maybe we are getting started on this next move down that goes lower overall. It's hard to say. I'm not completely convinced one way or another which one's going to be the better performer overall through this cycle. At the moment, if I had to guess, if I had to just be directly honest, looking at the charts, I would think Sandbox is the better performer. But I think it's too early to say that, and we don't have enough conclusive evidence, because it's completely possible that by the end of the cycle, Mana could, not only regain some of the ground that it's lost, but it could exceed it too. It's very possible. So I don't know if this helped too much in establishing that. It definitely did help me establish more so what to expect Mana versus Sandbox over the coming days, over the coming weeks, and then, of course, over the coming weeks and coming months. I think by the end of January, we see Mana having the smaller move. We see Sandbox having the bigger move, but probably by Christmas time, I would expect that from here, Mana being at 61.5 cents, Sandbox being at about 73.5 cents, I would expect Mana catches up to Sandbox a little bit. It might be the first mover, right? They both had this move up. They're on pause and ready to move up again. Mana might move first. Sandbox will resume its move afterwards, is my kind of thought. Or maybe they resume it at the same time. Mana just has a faster pace at first. I don't know. But I feel like I'm repeating myself, so I'm just going to stop talking. If you like the video, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Both of these coins, I think, have very interesting prospects. Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about the all-time highs. I'm sorry. We wanted to do that too. I got sidetracked, right? This Mana versus Sand chart wasn't giving me enough. It's too weird, right? Like the way you look right now, it looks like you could just plummet to zero. But you never know when you get some kind of miraculous bounce with stuff like this too, right? Again, you're the most overbought right before you had the sell-off. Well, now you're the most oversold you've ever been. What by that same logic, might you bounce from here? I don't know. But all-time highs, all-time high predictions. So for Mana, from a high to a low, the extended areas that we get are 1450 to 4550 as our primary target area, right? That's our primary target zone. I think it's very possible that Mana tops off somewhere probably between $45.50 and $23. That to me would be exceptional areas. Anything higher than that would be euphoric, right? If we don't at least hit $23, that's okay. $14.51 will do, but that would be to me a little bit of a disappointing cycle to see for Mana. So that's the primary target zone. Let's get the measurements down and just see what the potential is, right? From the current price to the minimum target, that's 23x, almost a 24x. From the current price to the maximum targets, that's about a 73, almost a 74x. Okay, cool. If we look at Sandbox and we take the same kind of ideas here, we go from its previous cycle highs to, I guess it's its all-time highs, to the relative lows that we just had on this move down, and we were to project out. If we were to assume that Sandbox sees new all-time highs by the end of the cycle, minimum target would be about a 30x, almost a 31x from the same price. Maximum target would be about a 113x. So I think Sandbox, again, I already had that assumption, but I think it does look to be more promising. You never know. You absolutely never know. Mana could definitely overtake it again. You never know what's going on behind closed doors or what kind of news will come out later. Mana, who knows? Maybe it sees prices over $100 this cycle. I don't think it does, but crazy things can happen. And I don't know if Sandbox sees $84, right? I think Mana has more of a chance of seeing its 1618 than Sandbox does. But even at its 1414, that's a 53x. I mean, that's a sizable difference than this 37x that this 141.4. But I digress. I feel like I've got nothing else to add. If you guys like the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I think both of these coins are great to get into. I think if you were to hold Mana, you should hold some Sandbox. If you hold Sandbox, you should hold some Mana, regardless of what your position is on them. Regardless if you, and none of this is financial advice, it's just my opinions, but it's a good hedge, right? It's like I don't know, if you have ETFs that are invested in the S&P and the Nasdaq and the QQQ, right? You've got them all to hedge against each other or whatever, right? Like I don't know, and they're all the same thing more or less essentially, but Mana, Sandbox, they're not essentially they're not the same thing, but they're in the same niche space. If you believe in metaverse tokens, I think having both of them makes sense, right? Because what's good for one will be good for the other, at least this cycle. Maybe not in the long run. One of them will probably outperform, but I don't know. Maybe there's enough room for multiple metaverses. I don't know how all this is going to work. Nobody does, right? Maybe there's room for zero. Maybe it's never going to happen. I don't know. But hit the like button, you guys. Subscribe. I'm done talking. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.